Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans joins us live now from the Shangri-La Dialogue. Mr. Brekelmans, thank you for making the time to speak with us. President Trump's tariffs and the U.S.-China tensions top of mind at this defense summit. How is the Netherlands approaching this second Trump administration?
Yes, this has been a key discussion, of course, here at the Shangri-La Dialogue. I think the speech by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was very clear. He was saying that Europe should first and foremost take responsibility for its own security, but that it's also good that countries like the Netherlands remain committed to stability and security in the Indo-Pacific. And for us as a trading nation, that is of key importance. So we are present here in the region. We do regular maritime exercises every 2 years, for example. We also do other military exercises. And it is important because we do understand how interrelated our security is with security in Indo-Pacific. And we do understand that we share the same values and principles that are so important to us. And I think the message of Pete Hegseth, but also other Asian partners here, have been very clear and on point. And we will continue to work on this together.
You mentioned Mr. Hegseth's comments in his speech yesterday. He mentioned Europe, but he made no mention of Russia or Ukraine. What do you read into that?
I think this was his first big speech here in the Indo-Pacific, so I do understand that this was his focus. He mentioned one thing that was very important to us. He said, and he explicitly recognized, that Europe is stepping up. That we are stepping up our defense spending, that we are stepping up our investment, our support to Ukraine. And this was the first time that someone from the US administration was not criticizing Europe, but was actually praising Europe for these additional efforts. And to me, that was very important. It's also important towards the NATO summit in The Hague, which will happen within a month. We are very busy with the preparations. We want to show that we are raising our ambition. But we also want to show our unity. And I think this message by the United States saying that they recognize that we are stepping up to explicitly acknowledge this, I think that is a good sign also in our unity towards the NATO summit, which is going to be an historic summit, because at the last summit we said that 2% spending is not a target but is a floor. And if at this summit we will raise the spending towards 5% or the ambition towards 5%, I think that will make it a truly historic summit.
Along with defense spending, what's likely to be in focus at the summit later this month?
Another focus will be on the defense industry, because we see that the spending is going up, but at the same time, industry is not catching up at the same rate. They are increasing their capacity, but it's not going fast enough. And as a result, when we are buying military equipment, we see that the delivery times are going up, we see that the prices are going up. But at the end of the day, we do not have enough military capabilities. So to have, we will, apart from the official meetings that we have at the NATO summit, we will also have a big industry forum in which we invite players from all around the world to come and to talk about how to increase the defense production and how to increase the capacity of the industry. And in addition, of course, the war in Ukraine and also our continuous support to Ukraine is also going to be a very important topic at the summit. We as the Netherlands have said that President Zelensky and his team are welcome to join. And I think it will also be very important there to show our commitment and to show our steadfast support to Ukraine.
President Trump has spoken about potentially pulling the U.S. out of NATO. How concerned is the Netherlands and the rest of Europe that he will actually follow through on this?
So of course, we do see that there is quite some speculation about this because President Trump and also others have sometimes made some negative statements about European efforts when it comes to defense. But what for me is very important is that in any official statement, whether it's the President or the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense, they say two things consistently. One is that NATO is more relevant than ever for the United States. NATO is a full force multiplier in an uncertain world for the United States. And second, that the United States is strongly committed to Article 5 and strongly committed to NATO. And those two fundamental pillars of our security, those are key. And the fact that the United States have been emphasizing this over and over again is giving me enough certainty and enough confidence that NATO, after the summit, will be as strong as ever, and with the additional investments that we are making, will only become stronger.
You mentioned the Russia-Ukraine war also on the agenda at the NATO summit later this month. And in your speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue, you mentioned North Korea's role in the war in Ukraine. How concerned is Europe about this, and how is it addressing this challenge?
We are extremely concerned about this because we do see, on the one hand, that North Korea is sending soldiers, but also if you look at the amounts of weapons and ammunition, it is mind-boggling what they are sending to Russia. And on the other hand, we also see that Russia is sharing technology and is sharing knowledge and expertise with North Korea, which is enabling them to further develop their nuclear arsenal and to further advance their capabilities. And I think that is a concern for Europe, it's a concern for Asia, and it's a concern for us globally, because we do see that the capabilities of North Korea, of Russia, but also Iran and China working closely together, that their capabilities are going up. And in the future, we also need to prepare for scenarios in which they are coordinating their efforts more and more, and they might simultaneously show aggression in the world. And those are the type of scenarios that we need to prepare for. And we also need to coordinate with our partners and our allies to make sure that we take responsibility for the security in our own regions, but that we also support each other to make sure that we uphold the values and that we uphold the freedom and security that is so dear for us.
Also, in your speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue, you mentioned the power of AI and how it's reshaping the battlefield. How do you see the rise of AI changing how we approach security and defense?
It is a reality that the developments are going extremely fast. We do need to make an effort to make sure that we keep AI under control, so to say, in the military domain. That's why we as the Netherlands took the initiative to set up an annual conference about the responsible use of AI in the military domain. We as the Netherlands organized the first edition in 2023. South Korea organized the second edition last year. And we, with an international coalition, we are following up on this. We had a UN resolution on this topic, which was passed by a big majority. Also by countries that are not necessarily working together on topics of defense normally. So I think that was very positive. And this is providing a common language and also setting common norms, which we can also use to hold each other accountable. And I think that that is very important, because we need to make sure that AI is not taking over control, but that in the end, human judgment is staying in control. And that's why it's so important to also set these international norms and to do this together among countries, but also with private partners.
Staying on the topic of technology, the Netherlands plays a key role in undersea cables, which are critical for global communication and data transfer. But there have been growing concerns about threats to these underwater cables. Why, and what is being done to address this security challenge?
This is indeed, for the Netherlands, this is one of the biggest security threats that we are facing. We see Russian ships showing suspicious behavior. They have been sabotaging undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea, but we have also seen similar efforts in the North Sea, which is close to the Netherlands. So we need to do three things. One is to make sure that we have the maritime capabilities to respond. What we often see is when Russian ships are close to us and we show with our maritime capabilities that we are seeing them and that we are detecting them, they often go away. So deterrence is working. Second, we need to further develop the technologies that we use in order to detect these Russian ships as soon as possible. We also work together with the private sector and with entrepreneurs and with knowledge institutions to further develop unmanned systems and to further work on our radar technologies so we can see them as soon as possible. And third, we also need to update the legal instruments that we have. Because, of course, we do value freedom of navigation very much. That is a key principle. But we also see that Russia and others are abusing these principles in order to put pressure on us. And we need to make sure that we further develop the legal instruments and the legal concepts that we have in order to make sure that we are not only able to respond, but that it's also that we are allowed to respond.
Let's switch gears a little to talk about China. China often views alliances like NATO as anti-China. What is your view on bloc politics and security alliances? For the Netherlands, are these blocs and alliances important?
So NATO is a defensive alliance. NATO is to defend the North Atlantic area. So we do not have any offensive ambitions. We are not against China. But what we do see is that Russia is not only threatening Ukraine, but Russia is also threatening NATO. Russia is expressing imperial ambitions. They are further building up their military capabilities, not only for Ukraine, but also to project their aggression beyond Ukraine towards Europe. And what we do see is that China is a key enabler for Russia in order to sustain this war. The only reason why Russia can continue this war for such a long period of time is because they have the economic and the diplomatic backing of China. And that's something that we are very critical of. We also do see that China is doing hybrid attacks also on Europe and on NATO countries, cyber attacks, also other attacks in the digital domain. So in that respect, China is also imposing a security threat. If China would stop this, if China would reduce their support to Russia, if China would reduce the cyber attacks, if they would reduce their hybrid activities, then we could get to also in the security domain to a much more constructive way of cooperating with China. So I urge them to do this. If they de-escalate in this respect, then they will find a reaching hand from our side in order to do this, because NATO is purely a defensive alliance.
In what areas do you think Europe and Asia can cooperate or collaborate when it comes to addressing global security issues?
I think there are many ways. So I mentioned freedom of navigation, which is very important for many countries in the Indo-Pacific and also for the Netherlands. So I think in the maritime domain, there's a lot that we can do together. Second, I think our defense industry can work much more together. We all are facing the same challenges. We all need to, because we want to increase our spending, because we want to strengthen our military capabilities, we all need to ramp up our industries. So I think there is a lot that we can do there. And third, there are various countries like Singapore and others who are technologically very advanced. I think there are many dual-use goods that are now used for civilian purposes that we can also use for military purposes. And I think there's also a lot of potential to cooperate there. I think what we also should stress is that if we invest in our defense capabilities and also in our industries and in our technologies, it's beneficial for our security, but it's also beneficial for our economic prosperity, because it is creating more jobs, it's leading to more innovation. And I think if we show these results and if we show this economic progress as well, it will also lead to more support among our populations to invest more in defense. So I think there is a lot of potential, both in terms of creating more security and also more economic prosperity.
Thank you, Minister, for making the time to speak with us. We were speaking with Ruben Brekelmans, Dutch Defence Minister.